guys, coming in here to make a video for you this evening. I'm not sure how long this will take. I want to introduce somebody very special to me, and I hope somebody special to you. But I really want to just make a video this evening, and if it is too long, we'll break it up into a couple pieces or what have you. But I know that we want to, I want to introduce you to my bride, and we want to talk a little bit about our journey. We want to talk about some of the neat things that we've learned along the way. We want to be able to give you a little bit of perspective maybe on where we are in this journey and how we're growing, where we're growing, and all that kind of thing. So a quick reminder, that's the camera right there, right? So we're playing with a couple cameras here. I'm trying probably the fanciest setup that I've done thus far in doing these videos, and trying to learn and grow videography and everything else so that we can share more and be able to help teach and that sort of thing. So we're on a growth curve or a growth journey in a lot of different ways. So this is a lot of fun as far as I'm concerned. So this is my wife, Kelly. Hey, you can say more than hey.
Hello.
She's a little bit camera shy, and she's probably very much an introvert. Although we've talked for a couple weeks about doing something together. Really, she came to me and she said, "I want to talk about something," and so we'll get to that at some point here in the next little bit. But I want to start just by sharing a little bit about our journey. Now, we have been married for 31 years. We've been married 31 years, and our background, we met in the military. She was a dental hygienist, and I was a young lieutenant, well-tanned, returning from Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And when we came back, it was my responsibility to get Panorex x-rays scheduled for all of the soldiers in the battalion that I was responsible for. And right almost across the road from our battalion was where Dentac, the dental clinic, was in the 82nd Airborne Division. And there was this hot young lady that was a dental assistant there. And, well, I had not seen a dentist in a while because of a couple deployments back to back. And so I made it a point to be in her chair about once a month for a short period of time.
That cleans your teeth too.
I looked for every excuse to go by the dental clinic and to be able to see Specialist Clayton, which it was interesting that her it's not a battalion. It was your unit leadership.
Right.
First Sergeant and others were sort of pushing us together. It was First Sergeant Maperchio. Mm-hmm. I still remember some of the names.
It was actually after my accident
that she started pushing us together. But it's one of those things where officers and enlisted, and it's supposed to be a no-go, and yet love found us. Yeah, so sort of a short dating deal. We knew each other about 6 weeks or maybe 2 months. About 2 months. About 2 months at the point that she had a parachuting accident, lost both hands in a parachuting accident, arced about 12,000 volts, hit some power lines at the Rayford drop zone. And that kind of changed things for us, put us through a big test at the very beginning. A lot of story there. We won't get wrapped up in it at this point, but the bottom line is in January of the following year, January of 1992, we went and saw the Justice of the Peace.
Actually, I was still in the hospital. I had gotten out on...
You're going to have to speak up. We got a microphone.
I was actually in the hospital, and then I got out on a 30 days after having a surgery or some sort, and that's when, during Christmas time, and Peter's parents and my parents came to visit us, and she was living with me. I was taking care of her. And my parents, we were thinking that they were going to leave without them saying anything, and so we went to give them hugs, and then Peter's mom says, "We need to have a talk back in the bedroom." So we went back there in the bedroom, and I'll let Peter tell you what my dad said to him.
Well, it's, basically they the conversation from both sets of parents is, you will get married now or she's moving out. And I said, we're not getting married and she ain't moving out. About 3 weeks later or 2.5 weeks later, she called me one day. I was at work. She called me, and it was on a Wednesday, as I recall. And long story short, basically phone conversation, and we decided to go see the Justice of the Peace on Friday, because on Sunday I was leaving for Ranger School. And so and it was a good financial decision. Why not? You know, I mean, I'm going to be gone for 4 months, but we can get BAQ, which is officer housing, or the extra
extra money.
The decisions you make, right? So the bottom line is we got married for the money.
I don't know how to come back with that one.
So I left for Ranger School, and that was probably the first good big test that we had. Just being separated for 4 months, very difficult for her.
Well,
She
I
was
went back
discharged
into
from
the
the
hospital.
military, back in the hospital.
Yeah.
Combination of things. Anyway, it wasn't terribly long after I was married, or we were married, that I told Kelly that I felt like I was called to the ministry, right? And she said, yes.
No. Oh, I don't even remember back that far. I think it was more like, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't, we didn't have children at the time and freshly married, and
we really weren't going to church much. We
we were.
Well,
we were going to St. Mattress.
Church of St. Mattress. We got involved. We ended up getting involved with a couple very good non-denominational churches, and while we were still in the military, started getting the act together, and then afterwards we were in Virginia Beach for a while. And about every 6 months, I would get an application from a
Ministry.
a seminary of one sort or another, and I'd think about it. Long story short,
And they disappear.
That was night, and then would disappear. I just wonder what happened to those. Anyway, by '98, ultimately, sequence of events put me in seminary, us together at Columbia International University. 4 years later, I was ordained as a pastor.
Well, let's backtrack. I'm sorry to interrupt. It was what put you in seminary was your dad died.
Right.
And then while he, during the service, you did the eulogy. And it was the oldest son and the oldest daughter did the eulogy. And Peter had 4 people come up to him afterwards and said, "You missed your calling."
And I said, "No, I didn't. I should have been a race car driver."
And so while we were at home, and we only had one son at the time, and Gunnar wasn't quite 2 yet. No, he was 2. By the time your dad's funeral was, he was 2. And we went by and visited CIU, which is Columbia International University, and the rest was history.
So after seminary, I took a church, really 2 churches in Winsboro, South Carolina area, and we were there for about 10 years. During that time frame, principal of a little Christian school, for about 3 years during there. I also worked as a funeral director. I told people I was a one-stop shop. I could baptize them, marry them, and bury them. Good times that was. We had 4 boys at that point. Had a little homestead. We were convinced that
And
really
homeschool.
and homeschooled from that. All of ours went through homeschool all the way through, except for our eldest, who had maybe 3 years of school.
Correct.
Prior to. So had a little homestead though, and basically raising some animals, milk goats, rabbits, pigs, that kind of thing.
Chickens.
And the chickens, yep. Father started asking me some questions I couldn't answer from the church doctrines that I had been taught. And the bottom line is we went through a sequence of events and ultimately came to where we were keeping Torah. We started keeping the feast of the Lord, and then we recognized that the Shabbat has never been done away with, started keeping Shabbat, and then recognized that God's instructions on clean and unclean eating had never changed. We began eating clean, gave away. We had 3 whole hogs that we had butchered, had raised wonderfully. I mean, as clean as you can raise a hog, and we gave it all away. And then started wearing seats, and ultimately wound up going to Israel 3-4 times before I began seeing something. And this is where the Father continues. One of the prayers that I prayed a long time ago, I challenge you to pray this. I prayed, God, I don't care what the price is. I just want to know truth. You show me truth. I just want to know truth. I don't care what it costs.
Well, you even prayed that at the day that your dad's funeral. You even prayed that too.
What I prayed that day was I had read in my devotions Mark chapter 1 verse 16, I think it was, about where the disciples left all and followed the Messiah. And that day I had prayed, and I just said, you can have everything. I don't need my car. I don't need my house. You can have my wife. You can have my children. You can have everything. Whatever. I'll follow you. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And so that was the beginning of the seminary and pastoral journey.
Right.
Speak up. You have to.
Sorry.
Okay, so after all of that, we were in Torah for several years, maybe 3 or 4 years. We went to Israel. We've been to Israel 6 or 7 times.
Correct.
But the first several times, I was learning and understanding about the 2 houses of Israel, the house of Israel, the house of Judah, how the parts fit together, starting to understand who the players are, what Scripture says, all the prophecy pieces, and had already published my first book, Repairing the Breach, and then published a second book titled 10 Parts in the King. During the latter part of 10 Parts in the King, the Father started showing me something else that was very interesting and challenging in Scripture, and that had to do with biblical marriage. Now, of course, if y'all follow my channel, you know that a lot of material that we've put out over the last 2 or 3 years has been geared towards biblical marriage, has been geared towards biblical headship and everything else. But I have to tell you that early on, that was a challenging journey, and I think that's really where we want to focus a little bit tonight in our discussion, because it goes in part to what you wanted to talk about, and also it just is sort of the central place where the Father has us at this point in terms of learning, in terms of teaching, in terms of sharing, growing, all of these things. So, long story short, what the Father started teaching me, I was writing about on my blog, and I was processing in my personal Bible study time and in the things that I was watching on YouTube and trying to understand and pieces I was putting together from Scripture, and I was not communicating that with Kelly, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, about 3 years into my journey where I'm starting to have this, I'm literally writing pieces for my blog. About 3 years in, when the fact of this study comes up with Kelly and she recognizes, oh my gosh, you want another wife? And what was your immediate response?
I want a divorce.
Y'all have never heard that, I'm sure. She said, I want a divorce. What did I say?
No.
That's exactly what happened. I said, no, I love you. We're not getting divorced. And that's just it. That's just it. And so that began probably, we're 5 years down the road now from that, believe it or not. We're 5 years down the road. But the first 3 years from that point on were hard years, challenging years. And I'll say this, now, for a lot of people watching, you learn the biblical headship and you learn the polygyny piece. We learned it backwards. I learned polygyny and understood that, but was I head of the house?
You thought you were.
Okay. I thought I was sort of, I sort of functioned that way, but I'll be honest with you. At that point, I was not I wasn't fully taking responsibility of the house, and I wasn't fully in charge of or at the helm for everything. In fact, what was going on was manipulation,
Yes. Yes, sir.
control,
Yes, sir.
had probably other things where I would just leave things by benign neglect to let you take care of that I didn't want to deal with.
Well, you would basically the happy wife, happy life type thing. You just wanted to.
So I'd let things go in order to keep
Yes,
her
sir.
happy,
Right.
right? And if she wanted to make a pitch a fit, she could pitch a fit, and I would often cave. Is that fair?
Sometimes. I mean, other times you would say, no, I'm not going to deal with this. And I would often get mad because you would never fight back. And you'd say fighting doesn't get you anywhere. And so I would always be the one that wanted to fight, and you wouldn't do it, and that made me mad.
So in some respects, I would shut down or just block it off, opposed to being more intentional and saying, no, we're not going there. This is my decision. It's final, and that's it.
Yes, sir.
So things for us began to get, and that's not that we had, all the years of marriage that we had, I would say, are good years.
Yes, sir.
Some better than others.
Yes, sir.
But there was more to it, and we were not actively modeling the Messiah and the Kahal assembly, ecclesia, church, whatever you want to call the body that belongs to the Messiah. Okay? So we came into it, like I said, sort of backwards, understanding polygyny first, and then starting to understand that you've got to have this foundation of biblical headship. And the biblical model is?
Messiah, man, woman, child.
Yeah,
Everything
or
else.
God, Messiah, man,
Right.
woman, yes. Okay. And where does that come from?
Ephesians?
Ephesians is one of the good passages where it deals
1
with the
Corinthians.
Messiah. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, yes, very good. Yeah, Ephesians chapter 5, I didn't want to put you on the spot there, I'm sorry. But in fact, even today, just a little while ago today, we were having a discussion about 1 Corinthians 11, verse 3, and Ephesians 5, and talking about the role of Messiah and the assembly, just as man and woman or his women. Okay?
Well, I actually had somebody asking me about the role of the husband today. And so that's when I was asking Peter where the verse was in Ephesians, because I thought it was in Ephesians 6, and that's the armor of God, and it's in Ephesians 5.
Right.
So,
Right. So that's the big overarching picture. But kind of just to give y'all a little bit more meat here, some things to think about, maybe some stuff to be able to take forward with you as you go, because I know that there's so many couples and so many families that work through this. They see it, and then it's like, now what do we do with this? And there are a lot of people, errors that we've seen. We know, how many, do we know some families that live polygyny successfully?
just a few.
Just a few. How many? Just a few.
Oh my goodness. 20, 30?
So
40?
we know a lot of families that are successfully living polygyny. This is not something that's foreign to us. It's not something, we're not talking about theory.
Right.
And it's something that we've been able to be close to and observe up close and personal. Some dear friends, some that you communicate with on a daily basis.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we will talk more probably about the polygyny side of it at some point in the future. I want to focus a little bit this evening as we talk about the headship side of it. Because if you don't have headship properly established in your home, if you are not the head of your house, men, if you have not begun to model the Messiah in the way that you are supposed to, as the leader and the authority and as the one who is leading your family, having one woman that's not in submission and then bringing another one in is a recipe for trouble. So, have we seen this?
Oh, yes, sir.
We've seen this.
Oh, yes, sir.
So we know of these situations, right? We've been privy to, we've had opportunity to counsel with different couples or full plural families and identify some of the problems and help them work through some of these things. But it was something that we have worked through and continue to work through. We haven't arrived yet, have we?
No, sir.
We learn new things all the time. This is good. And would you say that life has gotten better?
Most definitely. Yes,
Most
sir.
definitely. Okay. So, what are some things that you have learned that have helped you, helped us? What are some things that I've done? I want you to talk about this a little bit, just some of the things that you've learned.
Well, if you notice, I am replying to him with yes, sir, and no, sir. When I was in the military, we were in the military, because he was an officer, out of respect, I was to say yes, sir, and no, sir to him. And then we got out of the military, and it just kind of stopped over, the span of years and stuff. And then it wasn't that I was not respecting him. It was just, it was coming across as very sharp, tongue-in-cheek type of thing of, yeah, okay, or yerp, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so Peter said one day, when we were trying to get things back in order, the headship, that he wanted me to start saying yes, sir, and no, sir to him. And I didn't have a problem with that. And actually, he has said that is probably one of the sexiest things when I say, especially when I am in the store and I'm on the phone with him, and I will say yes, sir, on the phone. And the look that I get from the cashier and from other people around, or even if he's in the store with me and I say yes, sir.
That's because the world doesn't understand.
Yes, sir. You're right. They don't. They really don't.
Now, there's something else that you say often that is pretty sexy. What is that?
I need to ask my husband. I had somebody ask me a couple of weeks ago, I guess, a question, and I said, let me get back to you. I need to ask Peter. And their response was, why do you need to ask Peter? Well, you need to understand, we have a brain, and we can answer for ourselves, but this is the head of the house. And if the answer is no, then the answer is no. And it's taken me a while to learn that, back to what you had said, before. But
well, before, if I said no, I didn't necessarily stick to my guns, or she would try to negotiate or manipulate or pout or whatever.
Correct.
We don't do that now.
No, sir. And so when I asked him the question, and he said, sure, I don't see a problem with that. So then I got back with this person, and I said, excuse me, I said, Peter says it's fine. We can go ahead and do that. And it just floored her that, for me to ask him when I have a brain of my own. And so, yeah. It doesn't take away from us. We're not stupid. It's
No.
just...
You're under authority.
Yes, sir. Correct. And so I want to make sure that I give that authority to you. I give you where it's to be, because you are the head.
Right. Right.
As
What are some other names for the head?
Master, Lord, Sir.
Mm-hmm. Right. And this is one of the things that is lost culturally in our buddy-buddy culture. What's fascinating is that understanding biblical headship and understanding polygyny. You've heard me say this before on videos. You've heard me say this. If you want to find out if you're the head of the house, just come home and say the word polygyny. And you'll figure out very quickly who the head is, right?
Two-headed monster comes out.
You should say that again.
The two-headed monster comes out.
Right. So, and going back to that just momentarily, as we work through that, that's something that it has taken us a couple years to work through. Now, some families or sometimes some ladies will very quickly work through and process it. Sometimes some men are very slow. Sometimes, the assumed perception is that men work through this very quickly because they're like, oh, goody. But that's not really necessarily true. For some women, they can work through it in 6 weeks or 6 months. Some women, it takes 5 or 6 years. It could take a while. One of the things I would counsel, and I counsel men all the time with this, is slow down. You don't want to wreck what you have in order to try to get something that you're not ready for. The point being that it's very important to build the house that you have, that you're already responsible for. It's important to build that first and make sure that you have that secure. Because, you don't get a merit badge for having a polygynous relationship. But you can get, a badge for creating a disaster if you do that. So the smart thing to do is to slow down and take your time and make sure that you've got the headship part right first. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So, very good.
And I will have to say that I've got a shirt when I work out that says progress in work, or work in progress. And that's what I continue. I am a work in progress. And every day is different. Some mornings I will wake up and have a great day. And then other days I will wake up and start out to have a great day, but then the monster, Satan, starts coming in, and especially if I have not,
flesh.
Or the flesh, especially if I have not had my devotions for the day, and then things are not so good, and I have to work through those. And it used to be that I didn't want to talk to you about it at all.
Oh, no.
Because it made me even more uncomfortable to talk to you about it.
Well, a lot of times it would be introduced in small doses, or sometimes I would introduce it with humor. It just depended on how much, I was ready for the wrestling match, because it always was initially. It's something that takes, culturally, a little girl from the time that she's tiny is reared with this princess mentality, especially in Western culture, that she's special, right?
Yes, sir.
And that she deserves the world, and that it's some man's job to give it to her, or she gets to pitch a fit. And we've worked through that, but culturally that's one of the things that we have to deal with. Now you have gotten to where it's funny, because now when you see other women with the princess deal or the feminism coming out, she calls it out in a heartbeat. That's manipulation. Talk about that for a minute.
Because I was there, I did it, and I know exactly what it was, or I can identify it very, very quickly, especially on social media, on the TV, just everything. I can't stand it now. I really cannot. And to hear some of the women talk to their husbands in stores, and the way they talk to their children now, it's hard. It's very, very hard. And so, and we have 4 boys, and so now they like chiming in with their daddy. and they know that it can ruffle my feathers sometimes still, and I just have to turn my head around because it can get very interesting. The amount of testosterone in this house.
So we have 4 boys. We're blessed. Our eldest is 26, and he's a nurse practitioner. And then we have a 23-year-old who's here in the house and works for a tree cutting service. And then our 22-year-old is currently living in upstate New York and working up there. And then our soon-to-be 21-year-old drives long haul as a cattle hauler. Livestock hauler. He's basically a young entrepreneur. Has started multiple small businesses. Has sold a couple, closed a couple, continued to move them. Constantly trying to hustle and figure out how he's going to do it, and now he's got a 3500 Ram and a 32 or 36 foot trailer. He'll correct me because I'm sure he's going to see this and then he's going to straighten me out. With covered in chicken lights, and he loves it. Absolutely loves it. Just an aggressive young entrepreneur. So we're proud of all 4 of our boys. But what was interesting now when the whole polygyny thing first really kind of broke, it was a private discussion between us, and then we went to a Biblical Families Retreat. It was kind of a challenging weekend for both of us, although in different ways. Particularly for her, because it's like, oh my gosh, now we're seeing this, up close and personal in real life, and so that was kind of challenging. But we came back and we had a study. We spent time in the scriptures with the boys and said, you know what? We need to understand the headship authority model, and we did a study with it, and then basically walked right into what the implications are with the man as the head, and the man having the authority to take more than one wife if he so chooses, and since then, whether they choose to go that route or not is between them and the Almighty, but they completely accept, and so it's a topic of conversation that is fairly common around here now, and it's a source of many great jokes and word plays and all kinds of fun stuff. We have a good time. So once in a while they like to pick at Kelly just to see if they can get her fired up, because she has her Irish red, honestly. So I want to talk for just a second about head coverings. Different people understand the passage differently, and I'd like to give just kind of where our perspective is, because I understand that the word symbol of in the passage on head coverings, again 1 Corinthians 11, the words symbol of are supplied. And so from that perspective, my understanding is that a woman is to have authority on her head. I am her authority. And so the way that works for me in my house, the rule for my house is that when she is out without me, if she's out by herself, I want a symbol on her head. But if I am with her, that may or may not be necessary. If I choose to ask her to put something on, sure. But if I'm with her, I am the authority. Typically I don't have her wear anything on her head in the home, although I'm the one that puts her hair up in a ponytail most every day so she can work out, right?
Yes, sir.
So you didn't like head coverings when we started talking about those, did you?
No, sir, I did not. My glory is my hair. That's what I kept saying. That scripture didn't make any sense. Why does it say that our hair is our glory if it's covered?
Well, it's mine, right?
Yes, sir.
One of the things though that for you as well, and this is more because of disability than anything else, you've always kept your hair short. So only in recent years have you started trying to grow it out,
yes, sir.
Right? Which creates an additional challenge in terms of just being able to take care of it and that sort of thing. So sometimes the application of certain commandments or rules or means of carrying those out have to be adjusted based on the abilities of those who participate, right? And so in your case, I've made some concessions too, because obviously, I'll be honest, I love a pashmina head cover. Have I bought you a couple scarves?
Yes, sir. A couple.
Okay, and I can put it on her, right?
He did.
More than a few times. I've done that many times. But because of circumstances, even when we're in public, she can't go to the bathroom and fix it. That's something that I have to do for her. So who knows? Maybe one day we'll have a sister wife that can do that, right?
Excuse me.
But again, there's some things where we've made adjustments based on her ability or lack of ability in some areas, right? She's a great mom.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to talk about? So what we've got here is we've got really kind of a basic introduction, a little bit, and at some point, I'm guessing Kelly will be back with us periodically, once in a while. Camera's not her favorite. I'll say this: she loves to work out. She's got she's got a what is it? An Instagram account with some people where she does some working out and shares some of her working out stuff. She's also a good cook, a fantastic helper for the homestead farm. She was raised by a dad who was a veterinarian, raised on a farm, and so we've been rearing animals and taking care of stuff. We have chickens and cows and donkeys and cats and dogs and all that kind of good stuff here. So that's kind of where we are. All right, guys. So Kelly, myself, Pete, it's good to be with you, and we look forward to sharing more with you going down the road. But just a little quick kind of introduction of her, let you know a little bit about our headship journey. The fact that we're on this journey with you, just as you are. We may just be a few steps ahead of a lot of you, but I love sharing this journey and bringing truth for what Yah's word says and what we as Israel have and what we're called to, particularly the need for a clear understanding and acceptance of polygyny, a clear understanding of headship and patriarchy and implementation, minimally of patriarchy in the home, and recognizing that it is a tool of dominion. It's a tool of taking care of widows and orphans and divorcees and others, giving them the leadership, the headship, the covering, the place of protection, the provision that they're supposed to have. And few things bring me more joy than seeing a man get his house right so that he can take care of more than just what he has, but God can multiply that. And we've had the pleasure at a couple points to be able to help a man and a second come together such that she's in a place of protection and headship. And we have some dear friends that are in that circumstance, one of which actually we had that counseling session in Israel, which was really cool. And so we see them often and get to talk to them frequently. I guess you probably communicate with her often.
Yes, sir.
So that's really cool. And it's just a blessing because she is now in a place where she's well covered and protected in the kingdom, and that's exciting for us. So, all right. I guess we'll shut it down here. So for King and Kingdom, I bid you shalom.